My name is Mandy. I'm Coral's Development and Marketing Director. Very excited to have you here today. I'm thrilled to introduce you to our Executive Director, Heather Stark. Heather started at Coral in July of 2022, and she has improved our organizational culture. She's inspired meaningful engagement within our alliance and all of our partners, and she's really driving our organizations to the solutions that will save coral reefs. So with that, here is Heather.
Thanks, Mandy, and hi, everyone. I love all the names I'm seeing in the chat here. Welcome to our third annual State of the Reef event. I just really want to start by thanking all of you for being part of our alliance. We take that really seriously in the way that we think about our strategies and how we move forward. You could be a board member, council member, volunteer, supporter of our work. You know, each and every one of those roles are really critical to our success. And so many of you have just personally, lifted a hand, really reached out and given us advice and thoughts about our strategy. And I really appreciate it. It really helps us move forward. Because of all of you, we're able to reduce the biggest threats facing our reefs today. I'm really excited about this year. I think many of you know it's our 30th anniversary as an organization. I can't wait to share a little more about lessons that we've learned over the last 30 years and really how those are informing our next 30 years. But what we're going to do for a minute here first is just kind of zoom out and take a minute to understand how reefs are doing on a global scale. So many of you have seen this in person, right? Unfortunately, you'll recall from last summer's headlines, right, about the hot tub temperatures in Florida waters, that corals are quite frankly, literally in hot water. Recently, Derek Manzello, who's the coordinator of NOAA's Coral Reef Watch, he was during a webinar, he really just asked the question about, is this the fourth global bleaching event really imminent? And we know since the late 90s that bleaching has significantly increased in frequency and severity. So many of you know what bleaching is, but just in case we have a few folks that are still sort of learning, I just want to come back to the fact that bleaching is the coral stress response to changes in their environment. Most of the time, that's rising ocean temperatures from climate change. Also, it can be poor water quality. We see that quite frequently in the areas that we're studying. What happens is the corals expel the colorful algae, the zooxanthellae that are living in their tissue. And so that reveals that white calcium carbonate skeleton that you see in the picture there. And that's why it's called bleaching. When the corals live without that algae for too long, they can actually starve and die because they get a large amount of their nutrition from the algae photosynthesizing. So we know in any given year, the ocean temperatures do fluctuate. But what we're seeing now is that the temperatures are increasing more regularly and the water is staying warm longer. And what happens is that while the corals can recover from shorter bleaching events, the long-term bleaching or back-to-back events is what can really lead to that widespread coral death. And so, here at Coral, we also see bleaching as a symptom of bigger problems. So climate change, like I mentioned, but also the fact that the reefs in that area need sort of better environmental conditions or sort of enabling conditions to allow them to recover from bleaching. And so we really need to think on a big scale about how we're going to be able to help coral reefs adapt to climate change. And I'm going to hand it over here in a second to Mandy and Helen to give you a little more details about our global and local responses to bleaching. Unfortunately, Jenny Mighton, Mandy's filling in for Jenny Mighton today because she is on a plane now. She was coming back from doing some strategic planning in Hawaii, and all of her plans got changed around, which if any of you travel, I'm sure that's happened to you recently. So Mandy's ready to fill in and we'll all be here to answer questions, but I'm really excited to introduce you. Mandy introduced herself earlier. She's our Director of Development and Marketing. And then Dr. Helen Fox, our Conservation Science Director. These are two amazing women on Coral's leadership team. They're really dedicated, intelligent, passionate people that are driving us forward towards solutions. So they're going to talk here a little bit about our response to bleaching that we witnessed in 2023 and our plans for this year. As we all know, the bleaching is continuing. So I'll hand it over now.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Heather, and thank you all for attending. So I'm going to zoom out to our global response that began when we learned of the impending El Nino weather pattern early in 2023. And I'll backtrack just a little bit to explain the global climate phenomenon of El Nino. And I'm not I'm not a climatologist or an oceanographer, but it's basically a weakening of trade winds that lead to warmer water in the Pacific Ocean, and then it can also lead to a similar pattern of warmer water in the Atlantic and Caribbean, and it moves seasonally, as global climate does. And these atypical warmer waters over a long period of time, as Heather explained, exacerbate the vulnerability of corals. So we at the Coral Reef Alliance have been working for a number of years with the Allen Coral Atlas global monitoring system. And one breakthrough in the monitoring of coral bleaching last year was that they launched a new bleaching alert system. This is cued by NOAA's Coral Reef Watch and allows anyone to discover where corals may be bleaching in near real time. So last year, as part of our work with the Atlas on bleaching monitoring, as the climate forecasts started showing us that El Nino was on its way again, we pulled together and updated information and resources in a toolkit for communities and dive masters and others to prepare and respond to bleaching. So there's been good response to this. We can put it in the chat as well if you want to access it. And one partner, Samisi Mayo from Conservation International, he wrote about it and he said, I looked up the coral bleaching toolkit and comprehensive guide, and it's great to see the efficiency of this information hub, providing genuine support to our fieldwork. So that was very gratifying to hear. We also last year created a campaign to make November Coral Bleaching Awareness Month, and over 150 organizations participated in this campaign by bleaching their logo. And sadly, we needed to actually implement pieces of the toolkit in some of our local field sites. And so I'm going to pass it now over to Mandy to tell you more about that.
Coral reefs in the areas where we work sustained bleaching far too long, and so our teams are still quantifying the percent of coral cover that was lost in this last year in places like Cordelia Banks and Taylor Bay. So if you're a diver or a snorkeler, I'm sure you felt your heart sink as you witnessed these coral changes with your own eyes. And for our team in the field, the loss feels like the loss of a family member because some of them have dedicated their entire lives to protecting these reefs. So what the team did initially is began critical bleaching reef health assessments in October, and then they're doing them again this month just to measure any changes. We really need to fully understand the depth of the problem scientifically, adding the data to the situation that we've been seeing every day with our partners and with our own eyes in the field. We also recently wrapped up a year-long study of water quality in the region. And coral reefs are struggling because of this too, that a big part of the equation is poor water quality. The new data that we've gathered is showing that there's poor water quality that stretches across the entire Mesoamerican region. So that includes Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras, and it's very concerning for our team. So now that we know that water quality is poor and we've lost significant coral cover in the Western Caribbean due to the impacts of local threats combined with the bleaching crisis, we're really focused on accelerating two key programs to help ensure that the reefs recover. So reducing threats that reefs are facing is the best way to ensure that they survive. And we need to make sure they have good water quality and a functional ecosystem. So that's why we're focused on two things: implementing wastewater solutions to impact critical reefs and increase marine protection and effective patrolling in these areas. That way we can ensure protection of fish populations in these healthy reefs.
Right. And so our response aligns with our organization's goals and approach. We know that if we can keep coral reefs healthy in large, diverse, and connected networks and reduce the two biggest local threats, land-based pollution and unsustainable fishing practices, that coral reefs can adapt to the impacts of climate change and survive for generations to come. And of course, an important caveat here is that this depends on humanity getting carbon emissions brought under control. As I think you're aware, this is our 30th anniversary. So we're now going to share just a little bit of our organization's history and some of the science behind this approach.
We were founded in 1994 by a dedicated group of scuba divers. Some of you have been supporters of our organization since those days, early days, so thank you. The early goals of the organization were really focused on sustainable tourism and education. And as our knowledge and our expertise expanded, we soon learned that the biggest threats, what they are and how to solve them using locally driven solutions. So you can see from our timeline, in the very early years, we were heavily focused on understanding communities' needs, increasing effective management of marine protected areas at a local scale. And this work continues to be an important part of our strategy. And we want to be sure protected areas are not just paper parks, but that they have strong management in place. To inform local management decisions and measure our impact, we started a very strong monitoring program to understand reef health, water quality, what's happening in fisheries, and community socioeconomic data. These are all important pieces of this complex puzzle. In 2010, we increased monitoring of water quality across all of our sites in the Mesoamerican Reef, and we supported a flagship project in West and Roatan. And this is a successful wastewater treatment facility that has a full sanitation model and support of the community to operate.
Moving on with the timeline, as we just the next slide. There we are. Thanks. So as we continued to learn from our conservation work, focusing on water quality and sustainable fishing, we realized that we had to address the important question of how will climate change affect coral reefs and our efforts to save them. And with this realization about 10 years ago, it was clear that the pace of climate change would be greater than our successes on the ground, sort of community by community. So we started exploring ways to think at a broader scale, and that involved exploring the concept of evolutionary adaptation. And in 2015, we expanded our collaborations with academic and conservation partners to explore this question. And this has led to groundbreaking and important research showing the importance of genetic variability to coral survival.
So we now enter this phase where we've taken everything that we've learned, we're taking science and putting it into action in our field sites. We have this flagship project, the waste treatment facility in Roatan, and we weren't really able to measure the full impact of all of that work until many years later. In 2017 is when we were awarded the status of Blue Flag Beach in West End Roatan. And now we're working with partners across the Western Caribbean to replicate these successes in other communities. In 2019, we launched critical water quality monitoring programs in Hawaii to drive cesspool conversion. So again, tackling wastewater, but now in a different region. And there are surprisingly still over 80,000 homes not connected to proper waste treatment in Hawaii.
So continuing on the bottom thread of this timeline, in early 2020, I joined Coral to develop our global conservation science program, building on our earlier work showing the importance of genetic variability. But despite that importance, it's very difficult to incorporate it into conservation planning and management. because in most parts of the world, it's too time consuming and expensive to do so. So, our current research and collaboration with partners aims to develop estimates of coral genetic diversity and potential adaptive capacity from freely available remotely sensed products, such as the Allen Coral Atlas. So, if we're able to do this, this would be a game changer for coral reef conservation. And we've also continued to improve the management of the marine protected areas where we work locally with partners. And globally, we're developing resources on how to incorporate adaptation into MPA network management and planning. As we learn, we share successes and failures along the way, adjust interventions, and fill in data gaps with new science.
And as management becomes more effective, we're working closely with communities to gather more data. This includes data on fish landings. This helps us understand if the fish biomass is increasing because of the effective management programs. And we're also looking at other important benthic species like lobster and conch, which are also really critical to coral reef ecosystem health. And to increase the management of these species, we've finalized a conch and lobster monitoring plan, and we're executing that in Roatan, Honduras. And we now have a team and partners who are measuring the effectiveness of these protocols and identifying what's working and what is not working, and making sure that we have a full understanding of lobster and conch and the important role that they play. So next we're going to go and share a video with you featuring Dr. Antonella Rivera and from Roatan while she's studying the lobster and conch just last month.
I am Dr. Antonella Rivera. I work for the Coral Reef Alliance as the principal investigator for the Western Caribbean region, and today we are here in the beautiful Roatan, Honduras, doing lobster and conch monitoring for the Bay Islands National Marine Park. Lobsters and conchs are foundational to coral reef ecosystems and the local way of life. These species are incredible. They manage algae levels, keeping our reefs healthy and vibrant. But their importance extends beyond the ecosystem. They're integral to the culture and socio-economic backbone of the region, providing livelihoods for many in our community. Our focus is on the Caribbean spiny lobster and the queen conch. Through comprehensive assessments of their population and the development of targeted protection strategies, we aim to safeguard these species. Integral to our approach is the active involvement of the communities that share their home with these creatures. This collaborative effort is designed to secure not only the reef's future, but also the prosperity of the people who rely on them. The launch of the Lobster and Conch Monitoring Protocol marks a significant step forward. Developed in partnership with local and international stakeholders, this protocol is set to improve how we monitor, manage, and protect these key species. By establishing a framework for sustainable management, we aim to tackle the challenges of illegal fishing and promote practices that support the health of lobster and conch populations. The benefits of this initiative extend beyond the marine environment, promising to bolster the economic stability of over thousands involved in the local fisheries, thereby uplifting the entire community.
You may have caught a little peek of Mandy and I as we were there in Roatan recently and got to be part of understanding what the protocol was and where we were studying them. And so it was neat to be able to be part of that in the field there. I'm actually often asked where we work. And as many of you know, our mission is to save coral reefs across the globe. We do concentrate our efforts where we're testing things locally in communities and regions where coral reefs kind of play a pivotal role, both in climate adaptation, but also that they require dedicated protection. So some of these areas include the Western Caribbean and the Hawaiian Islands. And we really feel that it's important to test and learn what's working, what's not working, so that we can take the science and our approaches out to others in other communities and enable us to replicate the successes and ensure that there's greater impact across the globe. This next video that we're gonna hopefully show you more smoothly is a great example of our work in Hawaii, where we have a team of 5. And I'm excited to introduce you to Erica, who's our senior program manager and head of our sanitation initiatives in Hawaii.
Aloha, my name is Erica Perez. I'm the Senior Program Manager for Coral Reef Alliance in Hawaii. I focus on sanitation impacts to coral reefs. At Coral Reef Alliance, we rely on foundational science to guide our projects. We established Hawaii Viola, which is an alliance of many different organizations, nonprofit and government, that work with communities to sample our coastal water quality. We test for nutrients and bacteria, and this information is able to guide our work and guide how we are approaching sanitation impacts on Hawaii Island and across our state. In the state of Hawaii, we have 88,000 cesspools that leach 53 million gallons of raw sewage into our groundwaters and coastal systems per day. This has a severe impact on local drinking water as well as coral reefs and the communities that rely on these resources. In order to manage the sanitation impacts, the state has put forth a cesspool conversion mandate to where all 88,000 cesspools will be replaced by 2050. With the 2050 goal, the state of Hawaii would have 2,000 cesspools to replace per year. And unfortunately, that's just not enough time to allow our coral reefs to be able to evolve and manage this impact. So what Coral Reef Alliance would like to do and has done as a cesspool conversion working group member is that we have put forth recommendations for legislatures to expedite this 2050 deadline for priority 1 areas that directly impact community groundwater and our shoreline resources. So if we're able to transition these cesspools faster, we could allow our corals a little bit more time to adapt to local and global threats. In Pu'uko, Hawaii, the reef started at 70% coral cover and now 50 years later is at 7% due to the impacts from sewage and local land practices. What I would love to see is the state of Hawaii manage their sewage to a point that the reefs and the communities that rely on them have access to clean water and have the ability to adapt to climate change.
I don't know how many of you have met Erica, but she is a force. She's someone that I consider a real leader in our work across Hawaii and even beyond in some of the groups she's in and leading. She's building real momentum for change. The areas that she mentioned, priority 1 areas, would not be prioritized in that way without Coral being involved, without Erica specifically being a conservation broker in those conversations. And we have some exciting other projects, I think, that are really gaining momentum. You know, I can hear the hope in Erica's voice. I know from talking to her how much change she's pushing and the momentum that she's building. Mandy, I know you can feel it too, talking to her. Do you want to talk a little bit about where our strategy is and where our Hawaii programs are going to be growing in the next few years?
Sure. Yeah, I have so much faith in Erica alongside Jenny Mighton, our conservation program director, who have very clear plans for this work to expand our reach by working with local partners to implement wastewater and sedimentation solutions as a part of what we call our Clean Water for Reefs initiatives. And I'm really also very hopeful that we can secure the financial support that's needed, the legislative support, and the government support. It's going to take everybody working together and playing their part to ensure that all homes in Hawaii are connected to wastewater infrastructure far sooner than the 2050 deadline, because we're seeing serious impacts to the reefs. You could hear Erica explaining just the impacts in that one reef in Pu'uko. So in 2024, I'm really excited because Erica is going to be establishing a coalition of partners that's going to be working on this. also conducting a very comprehensive situational analysis on the homeowner's understanding of cesspool conversion and what resources are available to them, in order to create a community-based action plan across Hawaii that identifies barriers, includes strategies for effective resolution of those barriers. And once that's all complete, then we are going to launch, alongside of our partners, a very rigorous statewide communications campaign, because we need to raise awareness of this. We need to be providing guidance to stakeholders who are leading the transition, and play that really important role to solve this big threat to coral reefs.
Great, thank you, Mandy. I want to give our guests the opportunity to dig in and ask questions. For everyone listening, we have a few questions already. We'd love to hear from you. What questions do you have for the team? What are your biggest concerns about the future of coral reefs? What are you seeing as you travel and visit these amazing places? You can put your questions in the chat. We'll go ahead and start answering them, and we'll answer as many as we can. I think we've got some good time here. Kate, maybe if you want to just not share the presentation at this point, and we can have a little bit more of a conversation, I think that would be great. And I am going to start with one of the questions that has come in around our lobster and conch study. Mandy, since you're playing Jenny, maybe you could start with this. I can always add and help too, but what other species is our team planning on studying or interested in studying, and why? You heard in that video from Antonella, why we would be involved in a lobster and conch study and how that affects the coral reef ecosystem. But I'd love for you to take a stab at that, and I think you can do that. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, the lobster and conch study is very important. And I think that's going to go on for the next few years, because it takes a while to get the proper management in place. And then beyond that, I think we want to develop and adapt a monitoring protocol for the long spiny urchin, because the long spiny sea urchins are one of the most important species for controlling algae on the Caribbean reefs. And there was recently discovered a parasite that debilitated and killed many of them in 2022. So our team is very curious and interested in furthering some of the research of our partners to understand why this is happening. So kind of taking what we've done with lobster and conch and creating standard methods and making sure that we scale that. So that will be next.
Thanks, Mandy.
Mm-hmm.
So someone, Kaylee has asked, are you working in Maui on wastewater management too, particularly after Lahaina fires? Now is the time to revise how wastewater is managed in Lahaina. And so I'll start, but if Helen or Mandy, if you want to add anything to it. So Erica's role is working on wastewater across the state of Hawaii. So she is actually in many conversations with folks all over each of the main Hawaii islands about how to sort of prioritize and manage wastewater. There's a lot of pieces to that, right? First, it was getting the prioritization right and making sure that we really clearly state the need to expedite this work. But one of the other pieces now that we're working on through bills that are in the legislature have to do with like the enabling conditions, right? Making sure that we actually have a workforce throughout Hawaii that can do cesspool conversion, that can work on wastewater and sanitation needs on the different islands, as well as state funding, federal funding, and a few changes to laws that are needed to get the work done in the right way. So particularly in Lahaina after the fire, we're very connected. Our collaborations there, there's a lot of resources going right now to study the effects of the fires on the ecosystem on land as well as in the ocean, and everyone's kind of holding their breath and trying to figure out how the rainy season will most likely make things worse. But what will the effects of the rain coming down on the land and washing things into the ocean be? So we're there and willing and able to fill in any gaps. It's really covered quite well right now in terms of some of that studying. Some of our staff members and volunteers have been out assisting on different occasions. But I think more to come there as things are learned. And Michaela recently did a conversation with our Coral Council where she talked about some of the different things that they're trying in relation to this. Like there's certain agents that they're trying to put on land that might keep some of this particularly bad things from reaching the water, but they're not sure about how those agents will actually be harmful themselves. So lots more to come as we see that unfold. But we are absolutely in the conversation about what will happen there, what the opportunity is for wastewater following that through Erica's leadership at the statewide level. So, and then our local folks in Maui as well are in many conversations. I don't know, Mandy, Helen, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you did a great job answering.
Okay, so I'm seeing a few more questions in here. While I look at these, I actually want to ask Helen and Mandy both. Helen, you can go first, maybe. With everything that we just reported on, what gives you hope? What gets you out of bed and to your calls and all your work that you do in the day and the week? What keeps you motivated and gives you hope?
Sure. Well, some days are easier than others for sure. Especially, I put in the chat a couple of resources around stony coral tissue loss disease, which is sort of the latest onslaught. But one of the things that I really like about coral is our really, I think, combination of optimism and looking for solutions, but focusing on like what is the most likely thing to work. So being very, I would say, hard-nosed about it. And so I really think that the work that Coral overall is doing, but my team also is basically trying to find solutions, working on some of the questions that will hopefully help improve management. And everybody needs to be working on things. So I would say that that's one of the things that gets me out of bed in the morning. And it's a great team. Like, it's a lot of people who are passionate and dedicated and all trying our best, and not giving up.
Yeah, that's a great answer, Helen. I was going to say something similar, that I think what gives me hope is knowing that there's a lot of rigor behind the science that we're doing. And so at Helen, at a global scale and in our field sites, and then combined with that science is this like just strong sense of community amongst our partners and many people working together in order to have these big successes. Helen mentioned stony coral tissue loss, and we have been a part of a collaborative effort to tackle stony coral tissue loss in the Western Caribbean. And I think that's a great example of it, because we've been successful in curbing the spread of it compared to areas like Florida, because we have a really big network of people who are able to mobilize all together with little financial resources, but just all of those strong connections and people who are able to come together and agree on a solution region-wide. So I'm really hopeful, and it's the people that I meet in the field that keep me going, and hopeful that coral reefs will adapt to climate change. Yeah.
So I'm going to answer that one as well, because I think it's important to always be thinking about that as we look at harder news. For me, it's when there's something that we've tried or partners tried, and you see that it can work, right? And just understanding that the earth, Mother Nature, however you want to describe it, can really do pretty well at adapting and changing if we sort of get out of the way. And so things like when we have no take zones or times of the year, right? And then to see the fish biomass, explode in the area 500% one year, 200% the next year, right? That it just tells you what's possible, and that we can build on those successes. Um, and and that really gives me a lot of hope, because there's a lot we can do. We just need to all get together and make it happen. And on that front, our relentless staff gives me hope every day, because we have people that have been, wow, they've been working on this a really long time. Almost everyone on our team has been in conservation for a very long time, and we don't give up. And because of that, I just see so much momentum building, with with the things that we have been successful in. And like wastewater treatment's a great example. You hear us talk a lot about, our sort of model, there in Roatan, but there are other communities already, working towards establishing a better situation. We recently toured some of those, and our team is behind them, helping all the way with funding, with management models, with going out and talking to the community. We are going to get millions and millions of more gallons of wastewater each year out of that water. And again, we're building not only community by community, but we're building tools and we're building communications around how other people can do this in their communities too. I saw Kaylee ask a little question about, how useful is education. I think it's really valuable, and our communications team, I feel like, does a great job in partnership with our programs team to, make the right folks aware, so they have the right information at the right time to make the right decision. It's something that we think about all the time. And then we have some other initiatives that will be new this year. We've got a documentary, we're part of a documentary that's coming out soon. I'll let Mandy say more or not. I don't know how secretive that is yet. But we'll be getting the word out about some of our big strategies on a much larger scale. Mandy, is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, we are doing a mini documentary with BBC, so that'll be coming out later in June, and there'll be a whole communications campaign around that. So very excited to share with you. I know, Helen, you might have some thoughts too on the question, of educating people, especially when it comes to those who might not have awareness of ocean conservation.
Sure. Well, I would just say I'm in the science program, but there are people and groups who actually study that question about, how do you get people who don't have necessarily a connection or awareness of the oceans to understand? And it's the science of behavior change. And the conservation organization RARE actually thinks a lot about that. And they have a Center for Behavior and the Environment. And they are actually there's a in-person one-day conference in June. So if you're interested in learning more about behavior change, I worked there for a little while, so I know something about it. And we also, Coral and Rare are both on the Ocean Sewage Alliance. So Heather's talked a lot about sanitation and water quality and the importance of that. So we are also part of a larger effort. And so much of that work is going to have to be around education and behavior changing and breaking the taboo around things that people don't like to talk about. So that's going to be a huge and important work, that will be up ahead, and it's going to need thinking about how do you get people to do things like that. So it's a good question. Oh yeah, okay, I'll look for that link for the RARE conference.
And Mandy, I have a question, for you around, so we've got different folks on this call. We know that others will listen afterwards. Board members, council members, supporters. Could you just name a few things? I'm sure they already know because you probably already asked. But how can they help, right? I mean, it's hard when you hear the news about bleaching or you see the videos and the pictures, and all of the news we already know just about the state of coral reefs, and yet we're sitting here talking about how much hope we have and what we know is working. What can they do from their perspective in the alliance?
Yeah. A lot of things. Oh man, everything from making sustainable choices in your daily life, to getting more involved with coral. Like, we would love to welcome all of you to come and visit one of our field sites. We're trying to create more experiences so that our supporters can come out and see our work through either a dive trip experience or an insight trip where you're working alongside of our team and volunteering. So you're going to see more of that from us coming out of the pandemic years. And also you can help by giving strategic support to our organization. So if you're somebody who wants to volunteer your time through our Coral Council group, that's a group that's meeting regularly, and they give us such good, meaningful advice on everything from like programmatic to fundraising to marketing and communications. And so you can reach out to me or Heather if you're interested in that group. And then giving to Coral, I mean, we can't function without our donors and supporters. So making a gift every year will help sustain our mission. We're also hosting a gala in October, so would love to see everyone there and to have the Corals Alliance all together in one place at one time. It's very exciting. It's going to be on October 19. So you've probably all received the save the date. So I hope to see you there.
Are you going to say anything about our speaker of that gala, or are you waiting to break that news? Either one is fine.
Yeah, we can with this group. So we're very excited because we just secured our keynote speaker, and Jean-Michel Cousteau is going to be spending the weekend with us. So to have somebody from the Cousteau family, the firstborn son of Jacques Cousteau, is very, very exciting, and everyone will get to spend some quality time with him. Yes.
You heard it first here.
Spoiler.
So please, everyone, feed us some more questions. I have one for Helen here, but happy to answer some more. We'd love to spend the time with you in that way. Helen, was reference by someone to our work in the Coral Triangle. Do you want to talk just for a minute about what work is starting there?
Sure. So we've got a couple of different projects, and just for people who don't know, not everybody knows. I imagine many people do, but so the Coral Triangle is an area that is unsurprisingly triangularly shaped, and it's sort of the Indo-West Pacific. And in 2009, I think, 6 governments came together: Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Timor-Leste, Papua New Guinea, and Solomon Islands. They came together saying, this is our shared resource. It's the area where there's the highest global coral biodiversity. And so that's what delineates the triangle. And they are like, we need to work together. This is a shared resource. And was launched the Coral Triangle Initiative on Coral Reefs, Fisheries, and Food Security, the CTI-CFF. And so we're just now starting with funding that originated from USAID as part of the Sustainable Fish in Asia technical support. We have just hired and are onboarding 2 Coral Fellows to be working closely with the Coral Triangle Initiative, one for the Pacific countries of Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, and East Timor, and then one for the Southeast Asia countries of Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. And the goal of both of these is to strengthen capacity in the region around the intersection of gender issues, small scale fisheries, and climate adaptation. So there's women and other vulnerable populations are likely to be more vulnerable to climate change, and they're also they are very active in fisheries, but they're often not counted just due to, structural sexism and other forces like that. So that's one of the projects that we're excited about. And then the other one is a collaboration that includes RARE, which I mentioned earlier, RARE Philippines, academics and conservation organizations in Indonesia, Coral Reef Alliance, and then the lead PI is a researcher named Dr. Maria Bager from the University of Leeds in the UK. And this is a joint collaboration funded under the Climate Adaptation and Resilience Initiative, which is a Canadian and UK funded initiative that's global and not just around coral reefs. So we're the only coral reef project in it. And we have linked ecological and social research to action project around adaptive capacity, both of the reefs and of the human communities. So that was, was a lot about, but just a little scratching the surface of those two projects in the Coral Triangle.
That was perfect. So I have another question here. They said, I think I heard that when a bleaching event is forecast, there is a packet sent to the local area. What is included in this packet? So I think they're talking about the toolkit.
The
Helen,
bleaching alerts, yeah, and the toolkit. So those are virtual. So there's two different things that you can sign up through the Allen Coral Atlas. If, for example, there's an area you're like, oh, I want to know if there's going to be bleaching in Fiji, you can sign up to get a bleaching alert through the Atlas. And then if, there's the NOAA monitoring, and if it thinks that, if the Atlas detects bleaching, it will send you an email. So that is perhaps what I was referencing. And then the toolkit I put in the chat, and that is something that we're getting the word out about it, encouraging people. It has what included, there's lots of different resources, but one of them is a checklist of what managers or dive operators could do before, during, and after a bleaching event. So that is another thing that we are eager to share and have it be a useful resource. And Andrea Rivera Sosa, who was she pulled most of that information together for the toolkit. She's been doing webinars both in English and in Spanish about all of these resources that are available. So again, trying to get education and the word out.
The right information to the right people at the right time to make the right decision.
Exactly, that's the goal.
A lot of rights. Thank you, Helen. That's really helpful. I think, again, please feel free to put any other questions, but I think we'll begin to wrap this up here. One of the things I just wanted to mention, you saw Helen and Mandy really talk about the way we do our work and really focusing on clean water for reefs and healthy fisheries. I wanted to make sure that those two things came across, and also that hopefully you heard here today that we're making big strides and big efforts to sort of reach out to that urgency that the reefs are facing. And so you'll see and hear more from us about how we're taking our successes and scaling them. I know that's a word that's you either love or hate, depending on which side you've been on it before or how you've worked with it. But it's real, and it's something that we need to do. We need to have an outsized impact for the size of our organization, our alliance. The reefs need it, and so we're thinking really hard about what's working, what's not, what we can replicate, start replicating, and then hopefully just sort of exponential from there. And what do we need to do that? So if any of you that are on the call have done that in businesses before or have experience with that sort of strategic growth, all ears. We're interested to understand how we can best take those leaps and move in that direction, because the corals need it. I think we'll always have that foundation of science that's telling us what to do, what the intervention should be, and then measuring it. And that testing in local areas is so important, because we learned so much from the communities that really have been the stewards of these reefs for generations. We're just trying to help provide some science, some resources to ensure that they can be good stewards for more decades to come. So thanks for joining us. Mandy, Helen, is there anything else you'd like to wrap up with?
No, just thank you to everyone.
Same.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for being part of our alliance.